We're working on sentence practice to make sure we can identify complete sentences and discern whether or not we have a complete sentence or a fragment or a run-on. What is a sentence? A sentence has two main parts, and they are the subject and predicate. But let's just reduce them into the subject and the verb. And every sentence will have those. Now, it could be more complicated, but that's it. Now, keep in mind, too, we need a capital letter at the beginning of the sentence, and we need some kind of punctuation mark at the end of the sentence, whether it's a period, an exclamation point, or a question mark. So, for example, Joe left. Here we have a noun as our subject, and we have an action verb as our verb. But it's two words, but it's capitalized, it's got a period, it's a complete thought, and it has a subject and a verb. We could also have said, he is. And here we have a pronoun as our subject, and we have a linking verb as our verb. Both of these work. Joe left and he is. They're both sentences. Just watch out for these linking verbs. Am, is, are, was, and were, being, been, and be. Those are the parts of the sentence. Let's look at two mistakes students often make. One is to write a fragment. A fragment is an almost sentence. It's missing either a subject or a verb. For instance, if it's missing a subject, it might read something like this. Is running through the woods. We've got a verb, but who is running through the woods, or what is running through the woods? Or conversely, if we're missing a verb, we might read a subject like this. The tall, slender waiter by the door. Yeah, what did he or she do? We don't know. It doesn't tell us. So we either have a subject, like this example over here, or we have a verb, but we're missing the other part. So that is what a sentence fragment is. The last type of mistake you'll see frequently is a run-on sentence. And a run-on sentence does have a subject and a verb. So it can be really confusing because it looks like you have a complete sentence, but if you rush through, you'll miss that. There is often another subject and verb, and a lot of people think a run-on sentence goes on forever. It doesn't have to. It can have just a few words like this one, which only has 4 words, but you'll see, as in the example, Sophia waits, Bella watches, that we have the subject-verb pair, Sophia waits, right next to another subject-verb pair, Bella watches, but there's nothing right here joining them together, which is a big no-no. So that is not okay. You have to have either a period, exclamation mark, or a question mark, whatever is appropriate, joining them, or you need a comma, and, but, or one of the fanboys, something like that, joining them together. You can't just join them with a comma. That is a comma splice, and that is also erroneous and not acceptable. So you can't have a blank space, and you can't have a comma, because that makes it a run-on sentence. You need to punctuate it properly. So with these, you really have to slow down and check, do I have another subject and verb? And that's why a lot of 6th graders miss these. To be successful, when you are trying to identify a sentence, a fragment, and a run-on, the first thing you should do is see if there's a verb. This is easy because verbs are a little easier to spot. Just beware that when you're doing this, you don't forget about the linking verbs over here that we talked about earlier. So check for am, is, are, was, and were, being, been, and be, because they are often sneaky. But once you find the verb, the next thing you should do is see if there's a subject. If you're missing the subject or the verb, you've got a fragment. But be careful. Once you find the verb, remember that about 99% of the time, I'd say 99.9% of the time, the subject's going to come to the left of the verb. So find the verb and then look before it to the left to find the subject. If you think you have a verb-subject pair, you probably don't. That's like in Shakespeare, and it's very rare. You won't see that very often, okay? If you have the verb and the subject, don't assume you have a complete sentence. You need to ask, is there another subject-verb pair? If there are 2 subject-verb pairs back-to-back, well, you might have a run-on, especially if those 2 subject-verb pairs aren't joined appropriately, like with a comma and a fanboy, like and, or with a period, exclamation point, and question mark, and then a capital letter. So you need to really check, do I have 2 subject-verb pairs back-to-back, and are they joined appropriately? Because if they're not, you probably have a run-on. But if you have a sentence that just has 1 subject-verb pair, then you have a complete sentence. As you're doing your work today, check out the complete sentence fragment or run-on activity here and work from level 1 through level 3 and get as far as you can in 30 minutes. Make sure you log in IXL so that you don't do a bunch of questions and then it tells you that you've reached your limit. Make sure you log in so you can keep going. And try to pass get up to 100 and then go on to the next one again. Just try it for 30 minutes.